Ever had everything you've worked for stolen in broad daylight? What if the thief smiled sweetly while calling it community sharing? And what if the only one who could make her pay was a few very large, very hungry visitors from the woods next door? In the picture-perfect cul-de-sac of Willow Creek Estates, everything looked peaceful. Manicured lawns. The kind of place where people wave and pretend they don't hate each other. But underneath, rules. And ruling them all was Barbara Kensington, Barb to her face, Karen to anyone who'd suffered her clipboard tyranny. Pearl necklace tight enough to choke her ego, clipboard in hand like a weapon. I was Alex Thompson, retired after 25 years keeping order in the military, now finding peace with my bees. Those hives in the back corner of my lot weren't just a hobby. They were my therapy, my small rebellion against a world that loved controlling every damn thing. I'd followed every ridiculous HOA guideline, painted my shed regulation beige, kept the grass at exactly 4 inches, even avoided offensive wildflowers that might upset the aesthetic harmony. But Barb still found reasons to send violation notices like they were party invitations. "Your bees are disrupting the visual tranquility, Alex," she'd say with that plastic smile, pearls gleaming. "We can't have aggressive pollinators affecting property values." Aggressive? The only aggressive thing was her cat that kept knocking over my hive stands. The morning it happened, I woke to the sound of tires on gravel and my dogs going ballistic. Still in my robe, coffee mug in hand, I stepped outside and felt my stomach drop. The honey shed door hung open. 2 dozen golden jars, my entire summer harvest, were stripped bare. Sticky residue glistened mockingly in the early light. And there, at the end of my driveway, was Barb. Sunglasses on at 7 a.m., designer tote slung over one shoulder, loading my jars into her pristine white SUV, like it was Black Friday at Whole Foods. When she saw me, she didn't even flinch. "Oh, Alex. Perfect timing," she called out in that syrupy voice that made my teeth ache. "The HOA Wellness Committee just loves local products. We're featuring these at our next gathering." Such wonderful community spirit. I stood frozen, the mug burning my palm. "Those are my jars, Barbara. Can't just." She waved a manicured hand. According to Section 4.2 of the Covenants, resources within the Common Interest Development benefit all members. It's right there in black and white, dear. Greater good. Greater good. In my honey and was citing HOA bylaws like it was the Constitution. I wanted to call the cops right there. But something in her smug, entitled expression stopped me. I'd seen her type before. People who weaponized rules until they became above them. Chasing her down would just give her more ammunition to play victim. Instead, I smiled tightly. Barb. As her SUV pulled away, leaving perfect tire marks on my driveway, I glanced toward the thick woods bordering the back of the neighborhood. Willow Creek backed up to protected forest land where black bears were known to wander during honey season. A slow, dark idea began to buzz louder than any hive. Nature had its own set of rules. And they didn't come with violation fines. Over the next days, the neighborhood group chat exploded with praise for Barb's amazing local honey initiative. She posted photos of my jars artfully arranged at her table with captions like, "Supporting our resident beekeepers. HOA Harmony." One neighbor even tagged me. "Thanks for sharing, Alex." Sharing. I hadn't shared. Daylight by the neighborhood hall monitor. Every time I stepped outside, Barb would wave from across the street like we were best friends. "The honey is divine, Alex. So smooth. The committee is raving." Her voice carried that fake politeness that hid the power trip. I nodded, watching, waiting. These counterattacks weren't loud. They were precise. She'd crossed a line. Casual way she twisted every rule to suit herself while terrorizing everyone else over mailbox colors and holiday lights. One family got fined $200 for having Christmas lights up past January 15th. Another for excessive tomato plants that supposedly lowered curb appeal. Barb ran the HOA like her personal fiefdom, and the rest of us were peasants who existed to obey. I started paying closer attention. making another trip to my shed at dusk 2 days later. Second raid. This time I stayed hidden behind the blinds, filming with my phone. She was bolder now, humming to herself as she filled another box. The woman had no shame. That night I sat on my porch with a beer, staring at the tree line as the sun dipped. The woods were alive with sounds. Somewhere out there, bears with noses tuned to anything sweet were stirring. I'd spent years watching them respectfully from a distance. They weren't monsters, just big hungry opportunists who loved honey more than Barb loved power. The plan formed slowly, carefully. I wasn't going to hurt anyone. The absurdity of one woman thinking she could regulate everything, including wildlife. I cleaned out some old crystallized honey buckets, the ones with the strongest scent, and began laying a very faint, very strategic trail. Nothing obvious. Along the natural path from the woods, across the common area, toward that perfectly manicured backyard of hers. I worked at twilight when the neighborhood was inside watching TV. A smear here on a fence post, which she'd once tried to have removed because they were too unruly for HOA standards. The irony tasted sweeter than any honey. By the time I finished, my hands were sticky and my back ached, but I felt something I hadn't in months: control. Not the petty kind Barb craved, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing the universe was about to balance the scales. The first test came faster than expected. Barb announced her grand spring harmony brunch for the HOA elite. Invitations went out with fancy script, celebrating community and local bounty. Of course, the centerpiece was going to be my stolen honey, served over organic pancakes and in little gift baskets. I watched from my yard as her guests arrived, all pastel cardigans and forced laughter. The scent of fresh honey must have been drifting on the breeze toward the woods. I sipped my coffee and waited. Around 9:30 it started. Then a large dark shape emerged, nose twitching, followed by a smaller one, air like a siren. Oh my God, what is that? Someone call security. Chaos unfolded beautifully, and mimosas spilled. The bears ignored the panic and went straight for the table, licking honey off platters with surprising delicacy. Barb grabbed a broom and started swinging like she was conducting an orchestra of terror. This is private property. You can't be here. This violates Section 7.3 on wildlife nuisances. I had to bite my fist to keep from laughing out loud. There she was, trying to HOA a couple of wild bears. The bears eventually wandered back into the woods, bellies full and muzzles sticky, leaving behind overturned tables, ruined tablecloths, and one very rattled HOA queen. Barb stood in the wreckage, pearls askew, mascara running, screaming into her phone at animal control. This is an emergency. My community event was destroyed by aggressive wildlife. Later that afternoon she marched straight to my fence, clipboard in one hand, fake concern plastered across her face. Alex darling, your bees are clearly creating a public hazard. Those bears could have attacked someone. As president, I have no choice but to propose suspending your beekeeping privileges immediately. I leaned against the post, arms crossed. Come back to my yard, Barb. Funny how the bears only showed up where you were serving stolen honey. Her nostrils flared. Slander. The honey was community produce. And if you're implying I lured wildlife, I will have the board review your entire property for code violations. She spun on her heel and stormed off, heels clicking like punctuation on a threat. That night I reinforced the trail, just a few more drops of honey and some overripe berries near her back gate. Nothing illegal left behind. The woods answered by morning. Barb was hosting her mindful yoga for HOA harmony on the patio. Mats rolled out, new age music playing, ladies in Lululemon pretending inner peace existed under her rule. The gate creaked open. He owned the place. Barb shrieked mid-downward dog. This is a violation of Article 9. Private property. Shoo! She sprayed the garden hose wildly, soaking her guests instead of the bears. One woman climbed onto a chair screaming. Another bear knocked over the herbal tea station and lapped up the spilled honey like it was a five-star buffet. The scene was pure dark comedy. The woman who fined people for messy blackberry bushes now watching bears lick her patio clean while quoting bylaws at them. The neighborhood chat exploded with shaky phone videos under the caption "Bears Crash, HOA Brunch. Is this a sign?" Comments poured in. Some laughed. Waste management. Barb, of course, pinned it all on me. "Alex's reckless apiary is endangering us all." She called an emergency board meeting and proposed banning all outdoor beekeeping. I showed up quietly, sat in the back. When she waved her phone with proof of my hives being a bear magnet, I raised my hand. "Madam President, may I present Exhibit A?" I plugged in my flash drive. The projector lit up with crystal clear footage of her sneaking into my shed at dusk, humming while loading more jars. Then the staged evidence night where she poured my honey onto a decoy hive in my yard, muttering, "That should prove it." The room went dead silent. Another board member whispered, "Karen? Seriously?" Barb's face cycled white, red, white. "That's doctored. AI. He's manipulating everything." The board didn't buy it. Embarrassed. The motion failed. My lawn, unsafe wildlife attractant, disappeared by morning. But Barb wasn't finished. Negligence, emotional distress, property damage, wildlife endangerment. The papers arrived in a thick cream envelope like a death threat wrapped in legalese. She showed up at court wearing a neck brace and dark sunglasses indoors, playing tragic victim. "Your Honor, this man weaponized bears against me." My lawyer played the full footage: night raids, brunch chaos, yoga meltdown, her own staged honey pour. The judge pinched the bridge of his nose. "Miss Kensington, you're suing because bears visited the brunches where you served honey you admittedly took from his shed?" He almost smiled. "Case dismissed. Next time bring actual evidence, not performance art." Barb ripped off the neck brace and stormed out, heels clacking like gunfire. The courtroom erupted in muffled laughter. Outside, neighbors who'd come to watch patted my shoulder. "Justice is sweet, Alex. Sweeter than honey." A week later her house went up for sale. Movers hauled boxes while she barked orders, never once looking my way. As her SUV disappeared down the street, the neighborhood exhaled. The HOA mellowed. People smiled again. New buyers moved in. A young couple who loved bees and asked for beekeeping tips. The cycle of control had finally broken. In the end, the most powerful rules aren't written on clipboards, they're written by nature itself. Stay patient, document everything, and sometimes let the bears do the talking.